All right. So we, as always, just remind ourselves what we're doing here, not just think it mindlessly. We're setting ourselves in the right direction, kind of like, stating our purpose. You walk outside the door and you say, "Where am I going?" So you don't just randomly walk. You decide to go to the ice cream shop or the park. Here, what are we going to do? Where are we going? Why are we here together? What's our purpose? Is to listen to these teachings so we can take some tools from it, so we can help ourselves develop our amazing potential, so we can be of benefit to others. So if you'd like to make that the purpose of our little journey together, then think those thoughts, and we'll sing the little prayer that expresses that. The last two lines express that. The first two lines are just reminding us of our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. If we feel we're already Buddhist, then we can have that thought as well. So I'll say it in English the first time, just I'll put extra words in to really make it clear what we're doing. Then I'll sing it twice in Tibetan. So what we're saying is, until we are enlightened, we are going to rely upon the Buddha, his teachings, and then the Sangha, the spiritual community. And then the second two lines, by the virtuous karma we create by listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha, so we can be of benefit to sentient beings, no matter how long it takes. Sangye charang choke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupha shok sangye charang choke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupha shok. Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, good. So we can see each other. Okay, so we've been talking about this natural law of karma, that as far as Buddha concerned, because he's observed it, he hasn't made it up, it's not from revelation, he's not speculating, he didn't create an interesting concept and then plonk it on top of the world. What he's saying is this is what he's observed to be the natural law that runs the world. That's the simplest way to hear it, And because we've come from a tradition of creator religions, whereas the Tibetans haven't, then they don't sort of they don't continually say things like that. But we need to say it continuously, because we're so used to hearing kind of religious instructions as from on high, and there's got a threat behind it, hasn't it? Because if you're naughty and you don't do it, you'll get punished. That is very deep in our bones. So I stress this 1,000,000 times for us to keep remembering that Buddha's not a creator. He doesn't assert a creator. We don't need creating. We do fine making our own mess, and fortunately we can do fine creating our own enlightenment. We're the boss. So this natural law of karma is such that every millisecond of what we think and do and say, every living being, every ant, every bug, every slug, every monkey, all the other beings we can't see, because there are trillions and trillions and trillions of mind possessors, sentient beings, as we translate. I'd much rather say mind possessor. Trillions of them. And they're going back and back and back and forward, forward, forward. And the law that runs our minds, the law that runs our lives, the law within which our lives run, is this natural law of cause and effect, such that whatever we think and do and say programs our mind, sows seeds in our mind that will naturally, being seeds, ripen when the time is ripe, when the conditions all come together, will ripen as our future experiences. That's the essence of karma, really. That's it. That's the essence. That's the big picture. That's the concept. I think it's a great idea. I think it's marvelous. I love it. It's wonderful. But what we do is we hear it as punishment. Oh, you mean I was a bad person before? We think like this, and that's the thinking that's not appropriate. Buddha's not teaching it like that. So we have to think about it, So the logic is that if I'm in charge of my life and I'm the creator of my present happiness and I'm the creator of my present suffering, and then I check up, do I want suffering? No. Do I want happiness? Yes. Well, the strategy is evident. Stop creating suffering and start creating happiness. It's all so simple, really, but we complicate it. And then, of course, because we hear it in 10th and 14th century Tibetan, we don't talk like they do, so it's hard to hear it, Maybe it's hard to hear it in a 21st century Australian voice as well. Who knows? Okay, so we've been talking about how we create karma so far, and today we're going to talk about how we purify it. It's all part of the same process. You're creating karma, but it's a very specific approach, So every millisecond of what we think and do and say sows seeds in our mind that produces our happiness or our suffering. As we've discussed, there are 4 main ways in which our past actions ripen. A type of rebirth, and within that rebirth, let's say our human birth, we've got the 3 other results of karma, the kind of like the residual results, the tendency to keep doing it, whatever it might be, playing piano, football, or killing, the experience of having it happen to you, good or bad, and the environmental results. So to learn to begin to understand at least these 4, it's a really powerful way to interpret the way our life is going, and therefore to interpret other people's lives, and therefore strengthen our aspiration to want to continue to abide by the laws of karma, because I do not want suffering and I only want happiness. And like I've said many times, we get nervous saying something as blunt as that. It sounds like selfish. But we're missing the point if we don't get this first. The whole first level of practice, the level, the junior school and high school, I like to call it, the lam rim, the lower scope and middle scope, or the wisdom wing, is all the nuts and bolts of the practice of controlling your body, speech, and mind. Why? Because you are sick of suffering. That's what renunciation means. It means you're sick of suffering. You're up to here with suffering, That's got to be driving you. Then compassion can add on to that. But we think, oh no, it must be for compassion. So we don't hear it properly, And that means when we now start to do the purification, because of this, we don't also hear the purification practice properly either. So let's go into that. Lama Zopa says we're insane not to do this practice every day. And the logic is because every millisecond, it's just the way the universe is, every millisecond of your mind working, it's sowing some kind of seed or other. Until you're highly advanced, until you realize emptiness at least, we're locked into samsara, baby. And the more when we study the mind, which is in the middle scope, the more we understand the depths and the primordial power of these delusions, in particular attachment, which is what drives our actions. I mean, they go profoundly deep. I always quote Lama Yeshe says, I can tell you about attachment for 1 whole year. You'll never begin to understand it. I mean, it's not just like, oh, I like chocolate cake. That's the level, that's a gross level. It goes to primordially deep levels. So we can't get there. You can't get to an advanced level before you get to the simple ones. So the more we understand the power of attachment and aversion, which is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants, and the more we understand the power of all the other delusions that come as a result of those, and how they are informing the actions we do, the more cautious we will be in leading our lives, and the more we will want to clean up our act at the end of the day, do a bit of weeding, basically. I mean, we know that gardens, just because you're asleep, it doesn't mean the garden goes to sleep too. I'm sorry. Seeds do their thing, So we don't, when we have this sense of that whatever you think and do and say produces the person you become, in exactly the same way that we know when it comes to the body, let's say, which we're so obsessed with, that everything I put in this mouth produces the body that I will get. So of course we don't want to be overweight and sick and have diabetes and all the rest. So what do? We have some self-respect and we behave nicely now. We don't create the causes of future suffering. That's all karma is saying, but we can't hear it like that. We hear it as punishment. I mean, we've got to think about this, got to unpack the concepts, unpack our own assumptions. This is the part of what practice is. So, okay, there's lots of 4s, aren't there? Well, here we've got the 4 opponent powers. And a nice way to remember them, I don't know where I got this from. I think it was my friend, a nun in Adelaide 30 years ago. She called it the 4 R's. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe she didn't invent it. I don't know. But it's a helpful way to understand. The 4 R's. And there's a different order, but this is, for me, the tastiest order, and I'll explain. The first one is regret. The second one is reliance. The third one is the remedy. And the fourth one is resolve. So now let's unpack these psychological states of mind, Lama Zopa Rinpoche says regret's the most important because it's the doorway. Pabonka Rinpoche says the most important is the last one. And you'll see the logic of this. Okay, so then there's lots of ways you can do this. Yourselves, you've probably got a sadhana that one of the lamas has written, and has got sometimes you do it more extensively with your bells and not your bells and whistles, but like your bells and your whistles, and your Sanskrit. And I think this practice is so important to do in the most simple words possible, because and it's like you talking to yourself. I think of this practice as being my own friend. Please hear this point, And if you don't, when you get used to doing it every day, if you do it lazily, if you don't do it, you feel like a loss, you feel like the weeds are all out there growing. You don't want that. So the first step is regret. What's that? And this is the one that we really misunderstand, Regret is acknowledging, saying, I did that. Okay, what we're acknowledging here obviously is the negative actions. Why? Because we don't want those seeds to ripen as my future suffering. And you don't have to be a rapist or a terrorist to do negative actions. That's what I'm saying before. When you know the depth of attachment and aversion, even the subtlest level of these still sow seeds of negativity. This sounds kind of cruel to us, but this is the logic of Buddhist psychology, the logic of the law of karma, So regretting is acknowledging. So how acknowledging things you did. So the first level of negativity, the heaviest level of negativity, which is expressed by the Buddha as his very first kind of like advice to give us. He exhorts us to not kill. The 10 non-virtues. The first 7 are actions of the body and the speech. So why are they heavier? Well, it's so logical, because they harm others. The crucial point here is because they harm us. They leave seeds in the mind that will ripen as my future suffering. But they're labeled negative in this sense insofar as they harm others. That's not the definition of all negative actions, because the things that I do to harm me only are also negative actions, and they will cause me more suffering. But the ones that harm others bring extra suffering because it's harming others. It makes it 1,000 times more heavy. So the thing we start with by, let's say we're Buddhist and we've taken the 5 layperson's vows and we're trying to not kill, not steal, not harm, not badmouth. And then, of course, as you learn to know your mind and you learn to understand what Buddha's getting at, you then start to realize, Buddha doesn't say in the 10 non-virtues, don't eat too much cake. He doesn't say that. Cake doesn't care. He does it that relate to other beings, but then you can start to understand, because it's all about the actions you're doing that harm you. Killing someone else puts a seed in your mind that ripens as you being born in the lower realms, you having a tendency to kill, you getting killed by that person, karma's personal baby, and an environmental result. So the energy, the urgency behind this level of karma is for your own sake. Compassion comes second. You can't have compassion for others until you have compassion for yourself. And it's the best way to say what regret is. So you acknowledge. So you start with today. You kicked the dog, cheated on your husband, badmouth the next door neighbour, whatever, with our body and speech. Think about it. And we might not do that much heavy negativity with our bodies, but we love our speech. That's our we love speech, and we just vomit out whatever we feel. So it's really important to, to acknowledge those actions. Because, our culture, we think speech, I can say what I like, we say. We'd have no sense that negative speech is harming me, polluting my mind, distressing my mind, leaving imprints of those tendencies in my mind, and indeed polluting my body as well at a subtle level. The Vajrayana model talks about this. So, we also know that even these days when we're stuck in our house all the time, maybe not so much, you're still interacting with other people. And of course, it's in relation to other people that we seem to have the biggest problems, isn't it? Sure, chocolate cake can be a problem. We understand that, alcohol. But the ones where we have all this stress and distress and guilt and all kind of knotted up inside is in relation to other beings. A mummy, daddy, husband, children, next door neighbour, the politicians. It's humans that get us, isn't it? Or maybe the cockroach or the rat. So you acknowledge the things, just sort of you think of the things you've done today. I did this and I did that and I did this. So even to get to the point of being able to simply state it, this is already so difficult. Why? Because we misconstrue regret for guilt. And we love guilt. And don't blame your Catholic mummy or your Jewish mummy. Guilt is internalized aversion. You are the object. Listen to guilt. I did this and I did that and I did this and I'm a bad person. We do this utterly and automatically, So what's anger? You did this and you did that and you did this and you're a bad person. So it's exactly the same state of mind, except you're the object. And so regret is not guilt. regret is also not, and this is something that's really, I'm shocked. I remember recently a person who's even teaching Dharma had this misconception of regret as saying, I shouldn't have done it. That's anger. When your mother says, you shouldn't have done that. What do you think? She's having a panic attack because her fancy cup has been broken. It's her own attachment. She's not being wise. That's not, but that's how we all ever hear it. We hear it as anger, pointing fingers, being critical, punitive. Regret is not like that. Regret is self-respect. Just like if you realize that you've got an allergy, or you're allergic, can't eat sugar, and you suddenly discover there was sugar in that cake. You might get some guilt, but really it's, oh my God, what a fool. I can't believe I just ate that sugar. Quick, what can I do about it? We know, we understand that is exactly the attitude of regret. Recognizing you did these dumb things that are polluting your mind, sowing seeds in your mind that will ripen as your future suffering, and you don't want suffering. You're sick of this suffering. You're sick of all this nightmare. So it's a really healthy attitude, but you've got to cultivate it. It doesn't come naturally just by saying the words, I regret. It could probably is sounding like guilt. You're probably saying to yourself, I shouldn't have done this. This is meaningless. Now, the other misunderstanding of regret, and I find this really fascinating. I have long talks, and it's really a struggle to hear this one. People think of the commonest response, and you might have this, some of you, so discuss it. Let's, for example, myself. Okay, I always use my example of my own abortion. Not everybody, lots of women have abortions, okay? So, of course, the Buddhist view is that the time that what made the egg and sperm in my fallopian tube come together and stay together and begin to develop into a fetus was the entry of a consciousness that had died a few days or weeks beforehand, a consciousness with whom I have a strong karmic connection. They made a beeline for that egg and sperm, baby. So then from the second of conception, by definition, in general, that is the beginning of a person, because the consciousness is there. It's a mind possessor. So when I always tell the story, and maybe I've told you guys, and I don't want to make you embarrassed or anything, but I was 23, I was a hippie, I'd been a Catholic, I gave it up when I was 19, decided I prefer boys to God, so that, I went in the direction of boys. I didn't have guilt. I never had guilt. Guilt was boring, So it was just a clear decision. So when I was in London, 1968, in London, and I remember feeling very fortunate because because abortion had just been approved by the National Health. So I felt, aren't I lucky, Because, and I always tell this story too. Many women tell me this. Many women say this. I knew that second I was with this particular boy. I remember the boy. I remember the place. I remember London, the time, exactly this person, whatever. It's in your mind, my memory. And I remember I thought, and I knew that second I was pregnant. Many women say that. It's very, because that's when the consciousness enters. I knew something had gone inside me. I knew it was as crystal clear as I'm lying there. I said to myself, oh no, I'm pregnant. A friend of mine, her daughter and the daughter's husband were staying with the mother, my friend, while their house was getting built. And the daughter came down for breakfast. And the mother said, and the daughter said, oh, Mum, I'm pregnant. And the mother said, oh, wonderful. When did you find out? And she said, 40 minutes ago. So she knew exactly too. This is a very interesting point. All I'm doing is reiterating this Buddhist view that in general that's when consciousness enters. So from that second it's a fetus. It's a human being. So I always think of that too. There's a boy. He didn't ever know about it. I didn't care about him. The boy, this person who had strong karma with me, obviously with me. I didn't even got to know the other one. This is the way to think about it, So instead of just this guilt and the fear and the hiding and that people do, holding it on and beating us up with it, tortured. Like there's a friend I have now who's trying to get pregnant and she can't, and so she's totally destroying herself because she happened to have an abortion. So she's convinced that this is punishment, for her having an abortion, and she can't get past it. So it's really, we've got to really look carefully in our thinking and try to make it accurate, So this regret, this abortion, there it was, a consciousness who died a few weeks before, a particular person who got the karma to be born a human. This is the way the 4 karmas ripen, the way we talked before. So they got a human body. They won the lottery. Not really winning the lottery, but they got a human body. But number 2, the tendency to kill, well, we don't know because, they got aborted at the age of 12 weeks, so there's no chance to know if they had a tendency to kill. But number 3, the experience similar to the cause of killing, the person's past killing, they got the non-killing caused their human body, but they've got millions of karmic seeds. But their particular killing karma was ripened as to be born to my womb. We had a strong karmic connection, and then I decided to kill them. I mean, then I got the doctors and nurses to do that for me. Had the abortion. And even on, they had to go back and have another D&C because they didn't pull out the poor little fetus properly. So that's extra suffering for the poor little fetus. I mean, hopefully the consciousness is gone by then. So then I think, okay, I didn't think of all this at the time. I'd been a Catholic. I didn't think of it as a soul. I didn't use that word. I just knew it was crystal clear. And that's how strong karma is sometimes. Between me and this consciousness, there was intensely strong karma. This is how it is with some people. You got some people you meet, from the first second you cannot stand the sight of them. It's irrational, isn't it? There's nothing you can think that they did. That's the strength of the karma between you. That's how come people kill each other. I mean, there's so many stories. All people who kill somebody aren't psychopaths. Karma ripens. You're walking down the street and suddenly someone hits you. You hit them back and they die. It was the biggest shock to you more than anybody. That's how karma ripens. The seeds are there. So between me and that consciousness, there was this karmic connection, And the strength of their past killing of me was a powerful cause for me to have this unquestioned decision: I will have an abortion. And then, interestingly, you could even argue this: the fact that I was in London, where they did national health was free, everything came together so easily to have this killing happen. That's the strength of the karma of this person. I don't know if it was a boy or a girl. Their karma to be killed was so strong, there was not a single thing that hindered it, It's very fascinating. This is how karma works. So the point is this: the strength of this person's karma was a major player in my decision to kill them. This is dependent arising. If you've got the karma to make money because of past generosity, you just have to fill out a lottery ticket and you will win the £1 million. Not because you're so good, because the karma of your past generosity is so strong. You just choose a number randomly and you get $1 million. It's not luck. It's the strength of your past generosity. On the other hand, if you don't have generosity karma, you can work 80 hours a week and never have enough money. So the karmic one is so powerful. So between me and this person, it was very clear. I knew they came the second they came into my womb. I thought, right then I'm going to have an abortion. I felt so fortunate. I went to the Charing Cross Hospital. I met a doctor. I gave a reason. He said, okay, book me in. Went to the hospital. The nurses, they were so kind. And then because I got depressed, I don't get depressed normally. I didn't know how to think about it all. They let me stay in the hospital for another week. They gave me my own room. They were so sweet. So I was so fortunate in many ways. But it was the karma to be killed by this. And the person created that karma. The fetus created that karma. So, because we think we make babies, we take all the responsibility. That's just arrogant. That's just arrogant. If this person in my womb didn't have the karma to die, I would not have been able to have an abortion. We've got to understand this is how karma works. It's very interdependent. It's not just me deciding, That's what guilt is. Guilt says, I am so bad, Our mothers had that. I used to go crazy with my mother and all her guilt. She had 7 kids and we had a bit of a dramatic family like everybody, My father wasn't the best in the world. And she took it all upon herself. I'm being a bad mother. I'm the cause of all the suffering. And I remember one time I even had almost to articulate it. I was so mad at her that it's like insulting me, as if I'm like this little infant who had no decision to ever in my entire life, that it was all my mother's fault. I remember saying to her, excuse me, Mum, I made some decisions in my life. Don't you be so rude as to say you're the responsibility for me. That's the arrogance about guilt. It over-exaggerates your role. It's neurotic and it's useless. Guilt is useless. My light keeps collapsing here. Guilt is just a waste of time. Guilt is just, I'm a bad person. Can you imagine if you just ate that sugar and you sit there paralyzed? Oh my God, I ate sugar. I'm such a bad person. I'm such a bad person. This is what my dear friend is doing. She can't get past that concept. I'm a bad person. I mean, that's just a demented thought. Do something about it, please. That's the point about refuge, regret. So, acknowledging I did it. So now, this is the thing about I was going to say before. Some people say, but why should I regret it? I did, at the time, that's the only choice I could have made. I always find it hard to even understand this thinking, but it's very common for some people, and maybe you guys have got it. What do you mean I regret it? Because we hear that as criticizing ourselves, you know. But that's like saying, well, I didn't mean to eat the sugar. Why should I go and do anything about it? I mean, that's kind of twisted. It's very complicated thinking, and it's got no logic to it, you know. It's due to my ignorance, due to the karma of this being who came to my womb, due to many conditions coming together, I got pregnant. So I take responsibility for my part of it. So at the time, I didn't know any better. It's true. So it's like you didn't know the sugar in the cake a week ago, but when you realize there was sugar in the cake, oh, I didn't realize. Oh my God, what a fool. Quick, what can I do about it? Well, I didn't realize back then when I was 23 or whatever. I didn't think about it, you know. And of course, in countless lives, I've killed countless beings. And we take the view that we've been animals in countless lives. And I mean, animals, that's their favorite activity, the poor things. Out of their incredible fear and suffering, they live in kill or be killed, you know, because their fear is so tremendous. Their delusions are so tremendous. Their suffering is so tremendous. So, you know, you think about it. I've been a whale, one mouthful of one breakfast for one whale in her long life. She opens her mouth and in go 40 million little baby creatures. Now that's very good at killing, isn't it? So we've done all this countless lives. So get some perspective, you know. So you regret, but you remember the actions you have done. You remember the ones you can remember. You state, and then you think, well, I've done it countless times. So then you think, so what are you going to do with this now? I'm going to say, I regret that action from the depths of my heart. Why? Because I sowed seeds in my mind due to my ignorance. And I don't want those seeds to ripen. It's very simple. I don't want to get killed. I don't want to die young. I don't want to have a tendency to kill. I don't want to be born in the lower realms. It's very simple, but it's kind of complicated for us. I don't want future suffering. So based upon my foolishness and my ignorance, I did that action. I regret it from the depths of my heart because I do not want future suffering. You've got to spell it out. And then, of course, you think of the other things. Kick the dog, badmouth your mother, cheated on your boyfriend, whatever, you know, that you did to harm others. And then, of course, then you think, whatever I've done since beginning of this time, in all my countless lifetimes, because all these countless seeds are there in your mind, waiting for the conditions to ripen. There are trillions of karmic seeds that haven't yet ripened. So you better get them out real quick, babe. So, because I don't want future suffering. That's the basis of regret, because I don't want future suffering. It's compassion for yourself. When you have it, when you understand this, it's got a completely different flavor, you know. It's kindness to yourself, based on the recognition that you produce yourself. So, of course, if you've taken vows, you would be specifically, I regret having broken or weakened my vows, you know. And then you can think, of course, of your old rubbish habits, like, you know, things that just harm you. You can't control your eating, you can't control your drinking, you can't control your porn. The things that you know are harming you. No need for guilt. Who wants to keep growing their attachment? Nobody. It just makes us more distressed. It's not being moralistic. Whether it's cake or pornography, it just increases your suffering, that's all. So it's, again, kindness to yourself. Recognizing this is where you're at, but you've got to sort of start to attack it, you know, in a healthy way. Like you might be in the middle of being an alcoholic. You've got to start somewhere, the beginning of the thoughts, to sort of move yourself slowly out of this nightmare. You've got to start somewhere. So you think, I do regret from the depths of my heart the dumb things that I do to myself, the overeating, the this and the that, and the video games. I mean, I hear about video games. It's just like pornography. You know, 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours a day. People can't resist thinking about it all the time. That's what attachment is. You think about the thing all the time. So it's so distressing for our minds, attachment. So you can think of some of your own rubbish actions, you know. I regret because I don't want the future suffering. Then you think, next step, whom can I turn to? Where's the doctor? Quick. Now, this is where it's hugely different also from the Christian teaching. You've got to think of this one, if that's been your past. It's distinctly and profoundly different. So when I'm a Catholic, the regret's like the first. I'm confessing to God. Confessing. Here, you're not confessing to Buddha, really. You could if you've got a very close, you know, you're going to visualize Buddha in the next step. We're going to go there. In this step we're getting to now, we're going to go to the Buddha. But really, I like to think of this practice as you talking to yourself. It's not just some holy thing, please, Buddha, forgive me, because that's the point. If I'm a Christian, by definition, purification is God's forgiveness. That's it. And without God's forgiveness, you are lost. this is completely not the Buddha's view. This is such an important point to think about, please. I mean, Buddha is a nice person. Of course he'd forgive you. But that for the Buddha is like asking your doctor to forgive you for eating sugar so you get off the hook and don't get diabetes. I mean, people would laugh at you for such a childish attitude, you know. Of course your doctor will forgive you, but you've still got to stop eating sugar. You've still got to purify your own body. Same here with negative karma, you know. This is your mind we're talking about. You can rely upon the Buddha, and indeed the second step I'll describe. But not as a forgiver, not as a person who's going to get you off the hook. And that's just an interesting added point here I want to mention. We find it very powerful in our lives, you know, the business of forgiveness. It's marvelous to forgive. Like if you've hurt somebody, it is excellent to you know, like you'd go through the first step. You'd regret because you don't want the suffering. That has to be the first one. But we usually skip over that because let's say it's our boyfriend and we've been mouthing and we had a big fight. And we're going, you know, he's going to work one way, I'm going to work the other, and I'm freaking out completely because I'm terrified he's going to give me up. So out of my guilt and neurotic and fear of him rejecting me, I'm going to call him up, please, I'm so sorry, John, please forgive me, I really do love you, I'm so sorry. And I'm desperate to wait to hear those words, it's all right, Robina, I still love you. And you go, phew, off the hook again. So we misuse forgiveness, you know. It's like, in other words, I've got the bad habit of bad-mouthing John, and then I'm using John to get me off the hook. This is very wicked. If he were really my friend, he would say, Robina, I'm happy to forgive you, honey, but if you don't, you need to make a decision to change. Because the thing is, if you don't make the decision to change, which is the fourth step, nothing will change. Nothing will change. And then forgiveness just isn't enough because it doesn't help you. You've still got the habit, you know. And it's just attachment to reputation that you've just fixed. So it's very, very, very tricky, you know, this one of forgiveness. And of course, if you feel you need somebody's forgiveness before you're going to feel better, and let's say, you know, like my friends in prison who've killed somebody, the person's dead, they can't forgive you. So no wonder they get depressed and think, well, I'm just going to go to hell, why bother, you know, and they want to kill themselves. And this is the point about, let's say my boyfriend doesn't forgive me. Then where am I left? And this is our tragedy, because we're so junkies, hungry for the approval of other people, hungry for their approval. We assume that if someone approves of me, that means I'm an okay person. If a person doesn't like me, if John doesn't forgive me, that means I'm a bad person. That's how we define ourselves. So we have these really terrible mistakes in our mind, you know, wrong assumptions. So this one is a very powerful practice where you are the one who's forgiving yourself. You are the one who's purifying. And even if you know, the 6 people you've harmed all refuse to forgive you ever again, it does not mean you can't purify it. I can't stress this enough. And Buddha's role is not to forgive you. Not in these kinds of actions, natural laws, you know. But what do you do with the Buddha? What's Buddha's role? Well, this is the second step, reliance. There are 2 parts. So the second part, the first part is where you know if you've done this practice at the center. Among all the Tibetan lamas, they love this practice most of all. It's the one that's said to be the most potent, the most powerful. And in general, the practices we do, the meditations we do that involve the Buddha, any Buddha, because of the power of Buddhas, the power of enlightened minds, just by bringing them into the mix, makes the practice very powerful. So here, the way we do this practice is in the framework of as a meditation. And the second step is, well, whom can I turn to? Where's the doctor? Because that's your relationship with Buddha as a doctor. Whom can I turn to give me the methods that I can use to heal myself? That's the approach to the Buddha. So here we visualize Vajrasattva. Vajrasattva is in the tantric aspect of the Buddha, not like the one behind me. And is particularly, he's a white version of Vajradhara, who is the main Buddha in Tantra, for the Gelug, at least in our tradition. So it's the tantric aspect. So then Vajrasattva is particularly powerful for purification. I think it's got to do because he's related to emptiness. I'm not quite sure. I mean, they all are, but because it's finally when you realized emptiness that actually you purify. Until then, you're just putting atomic bombs under the seeds, preventing them from growing. You won't rip out the seeds until you realize emptiness. So here you turn to the Buddha. So then, you know, if you've got a Buddha, if you like the Buddha, if you rely upon Buddha's teachings, And particularly if you've got a person in human form who you decide is your spiritual mentor, your guru, your person heavy with qualities, your lama, then we need, we all are very fragile and we need support. So it's very powerful in your mind to turn to the Guru Buddha, above your head. So you visualize Vajrasattva above your head, and if you have a guru, you think it's their mind manifesting as Vajrasattva for your benefit. So you just, this first part of the second step of reliance is the first part is refuge. So you can say a little refuge prayer there. But for me, I want to make it just really real, not just reciting words mindlessly. So for me, the real point here is, can you imagine if you've got some incredible disease and you've eaten some poison? The Lamas always use the example of you've eaten poison. Then you're going to be frantic, aren't you, to find a solution. So if you find a doctor who's got the antidote to your poison, think of how you'd feel. You'd be over the moon. You'd go to well, when I'm in Europe, I say you'd go to Tasmania. And when I'm in Australia, you say you'd go to Iceland. So you're about in the middle somewhere. No, you probably got to go to Tasmania. You've heard of some doctor in Tasmania who's got the antidote. Honey, children, I tell you, you would find even a first-class ticket and you'd get there. This is the attitude of regret, of reliance. Not, I take refuge in the Buddha, blah, 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 You're so happy to have a doctor. Okay, so reliance is this kind of delight that you found a person called the Buddha who's got techniques that you can use to purify your negative karma, because the fundamental logic of karma being natural law of cause and effect and impermanent, there's no karma we can't purify. See, this is the most devastating suffering we have in our culture, of this terrible, unbearable guilt, and then we build that story up until we have no choice but to kill ourselves. It is just unbearable. Because this is the tragedy about the delusions. All delusions exaggerate the object. So it's really, this is the one where we have to understand there's no karma we can't purify, because it's a dependent arising, and the dependent arising means nothing set in stone. And the tragedy is, like I said, the function of all the delusions is to exaggerate. So guilt exaggerates our badness to the point where we totally believe that I'm just evil in my nature. This is the worst tragedy in our culture, So that's why this should be a very energizing practice, because there's nothing you can't purify. But you've got to think of it in the right way. So the second step is you should be so delighted to think you've got the Buddha, you've got the techniques, That's refuge. And the second part, under the heading of reliance, is... under the heading of reliance, the second part is now where you have compassion for others. So it's the first thing is, well, what do you mean it's called reliance? Why is compassion under the heading called reliance? Well, I'll explain. There's a particular approach they have. My light just keeps collapsing and poor Buddha's in the dark. I want you to see Buddha. There, just for a bit. What to do? It keeps falling. Never mind. So, okay. The whole way they talk, in the Bodhisattva path is that here we're now trying to have compassion for those we've harmed. So why do we call that reliance? Well, it's very simple. If you want to develop compassion is empathy with the suffering of others. And you want to be that's the driving force of the Bodhisattva path. So if you want to cultivate compassion, what if you never met a suffering person? What if you never met a suffering person? Think about this. Think about it. What if you never met a suffering person? You'd never get compassion, could you? Think of it. It's very logical. So in that sense, we need to know about suffering people. We rely upon knowing about suffering people. That's the concept behind it. Without suffering people, without seeing suffering, that's why the bodhisattvas don't want to rush off into the mountains and disappear. They want to come down to the smelly old cities like Leeds and London and everywhere else. Leeds is hardly very smelly, but probably a little bit baby, not like London. Big fat cities where all the crazies are. The bodhisattvas love the crazies. It's grist for their mill. So in order to get compassion, you need suffering sentient beings. So in this second part, you now have compassion for the baby I aborted, for the boyfriend you cheated on, the rat you killed, whatever it might have been, and all the other actions in countless past lives, all the trillions of sentient beings you've eaten, harmed, abused, raped, tortured, in all countless past lives. You think of all these suffering sentient beings whom you have harmed. Do you understand so far, people, what we're talking about? You get the point. So the first one is regret is specifically like compassion for yourself. You're owning responsibility. You're recognizing the dumb things you've said and done in countless past lives. You're sick of this suffering because you know that these seeds are going to ripen, and you regret from the depths of your heart because you do not want future suffering. That's the attitude of regret to cultivate. Not guilt, not I shouldn't have done it, nothing like that. It's kindness. Then the second step, you're so relieved to find the Buddha, you visualize the Buddha, you take refuge in a little prayer, or you just delight you've got a doctor. Then the second part, you think of the particular sentient beings. You can think of some. I mean, there are trillions we've harmed. You think of just some. The boyfriend, the rat, the baby, different ones. And you think, now I regret for their sake. I must purify for their sake. And you think, you have to own the responsibility. You did harm them, even if they harmed you more. This is part of the problem. Well, what do you mean have compassion? He harmed me more than I harmed him. You've got to take responsibility for your part of it, your part of it. So have compassion for this person. Now, if you're brave enough, you also have compassion for those who have harmed you. This is the most powerful. This is intense. And if you can't do it, don't go there. If you've been abused by somebody and you still haven't gotten over it, then leave it there. But if you can, and what is the logic of that? And that's why getting to the compassion practice is impossible until we've understood karma. This is very, very logical. It's not, it's worth talking about. Yeah, okay, let's talk about for a second why the understanding of karma for ourselves is crucial in order to have valid compassion. This is not the topic of karma, but it's very important to understand this. So compassion, what's compassion? This is the more advanced teachings. As the Dalai Lama says, compassion is not enough. You need wisdom, and this is all the work of the wisdom wing. Junior school, high school, understanding karma, understanding your delusions, understanding your suffering, being sick of your suffering. So that means, of course, in the Four Noble Truths, you study the first one, and there are three kinds of suffering. The first kind is the suffering of suffering, which is when the bad things happen. That's understandable. But the second and the third are more abstract for us and very hard to get to, but we can begin to understand. So the second one is called the suffering of change. So what does Buddha mean by that? Well, it's very depressing. Buddha means what we mean by happiness. What we think of in life, there's two things. Suffering is when attachment doesn't get what it wants, which is the bad things, and happiness is when attachment does get what it wants, because attachment runs the show. Attachment is this default assumption deep in our bones that we only must get the nice things to happen and we do not want the bad things to happen. That's the only way we think of suffering. But Buddha's got a more nuanced, subtle look at suffering. He says even what we call happiness, which is when attachment gets what it wants, that's the subtler, more pervasive level of suffering. Because it doesn't, the happiness that does come, this is sort of technical, you've got to think about this. So what's happiness for a second? Let's discuss this. When you study the mind in the middle scope, you learn about the positive states of mind, the negative states of mind, and the neutral states of mind, or I prefer to call them the mechanics. And there's these very distinct, I'm sure we've talked about this, very distinct characteristics. This is kind of unique to the Buddha's view of the mind. And if we don't understand this, we don't understand Buddha's view of the mind. And if we don't understand Buddha's view of the mind, how can you give up attachment, for goodness sake? How can you get liberated? It's not possible. So there's one state of mind in the third category, the mechanics, I call it that. And these are states of mind that are neither negative in their character nor positive in their character. But they're crucial, nevertheless. They're good. You need them. Concentration, for example. The word mindfulness, we use it in lots of ways, but it really is simply referring to this very specific state of mind that is the ability to not forget what you're doing moment by moment. Well, as Lama Zopa says, thieves need mindfulness. But when we hear that word mindfulness, we hear it as a virtue because we put all these extra bells and whistles on it. I remember one person at one teaching left because he was so insulted. He thought I was insulting Vipassana meditation or something. No, I'm just using Buddhist psychology here. So there's many of these states of mind: concentration, good memory, discrimination. There's many of these without which you'd be a senile person. You couldn't function. So whether you're a murderer or a meditator, you need good concentration, you need mindfulness, and we don't hear it in the way we hear it. You need a good memory, you need discrimination because you might murder the wrong person. You need all of these parts of your mind that I like to call the mechanics. Now, what's fascinating, in that third category, one of those states of mind is called feeling. You hear it in the five aggregates. Buddha talks about it all the time. Feeling. So what does that mean? Well, for the Buddha, it's not an equivalent of an emotion, not the way we use this word. It's very precise. There are only 3 kinds of feelings: pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, neutral feelings. Well, let's forget the neutral. They do exist, but we just don't even bother with those. All we are concerned with, is it not, are the pleasant ones and the unpleasant ones. Well, what are other words for those? Well, guess what? The word joy, the word happiness, or even the more extreme words, bliss, ecstasy, rapture. They're all variations on a spectrum of mild to intense of happy feelings. Now, these are not delusions, but our trouble is because we understand attachment is a negative state of mind, but we conflate it with pleasant feelings. We're so confused because we haven't studied the Buddha's view properly. As Lama Zopa says, when we hear the Buddha says, sorry guys, you've got to give up attachment, we go, oh, I've got to give up my heart, I've got to give up my happiness. No, because we haven't studied Buddha's view. Feeling, happy feelings. Lama Yeshe would say, the more pleasure the better, dear. Because he said, you pathetic hippies, well, he didn't say pathetic, he was always so kind to us. He says, you don't even know how to be happy. You love to be miserable. We're full of guilt and neurotic, aren't we? All of us. So feeling means happy feeling. And then the suffering feeling. There's only 2 kinds. So now, attachment's job, the junkie in us, is to get the object that we believe such that when we have contact with it, pleasant feelings are triggered. Think about it. Think about, really, attachment. We can say we're attached to chocolate cake. But if you just sat there watching the chocolate cake, you wouldn't be satisfied, would you? You've got to put it in the mouth. Why? Because you want a pleasant feeling. So we all are hungry for happy feelings. We are hungry for happy feelings. So the only method we know in this samsaric body of ours, this is the subtler level of suffering the Buddha's talking about. The only way we know how to have any pleasant feelings, generally speaking, look at the world, is to get an object of the 5 senses. Think about this. No wonder we're junkies. Now, Buddha happens to say, this is why it's marvellous to read the books like Lama Yeshe's Mahamudra, when he talks about the marvellous natural qualities, the natural potential for unbelievable bliss and joy and happy feelings that our minds just naturally possess, that we can access when we develop single point of concentration. It's just natural. But we don't know how to access it. So we have to eat cakes and have boyfriends and watch porn and, or every single tiny thing we do. So when we begin to understand that attachment and how it causes suffering and how it does bring happy feelings. This is true. So, okay, Buddha's not arguing. The cake, there's the cake. Your mind's thinking about it, you're dissatisfied. Oh, what's missing? That's dissatisfaction. Then you think of the cake. And you get all excited and the anticipation comes and you get the cake. And all this procedure, making it, buying it, is to get it on the plate, then to get it in this mouth here, isn't it? That's the goal, the purpose of the whole thing. So once you put that in the mouth, and if your stomach is nice and empty and the cake is, things come together, you will go, oh, that's so delicious. And it is delicious. You did just experience a pleasant feeling. Fact. Buddha does not argue with you, but what he is saying is this, and this is scientific truth, but we can't bear to hear it. We think Buddha's just being punitive. No, he's just pointing out facts. And this is why we have to really analyze the process of attachment, really look into our minds deeply. What happens is you're dissatisfied, which is a function of attachment. Then you think of something, so you get all overexcited and you anticipate. It's a function of attachment. Then you manipulate to get the cake. It's a function of attachment. Then you put it in the mouth. Then attachment is painting a picture of that cake on that plate like you can't believe. It's like it looks like divine to you. That's made up by attachment. It's made up by attachment. And you listen to this as proof. So you're so excited, so anticipating. It looks so divine. You can't believe it. There's no control. In the mouth it goes. So then, and it's blissful. But what happens? Even as you're chewing that first mouthful, already you're dissatisfied, and already you're thinking of the next mouthful. Because one of the most, the simple function of attachment is we can't be satisfied right this second. We're always anticipating something, never satisfied with what we've got. Millisecond by millisecond by millisecond, we are dissatisfied. So that first mouthful is probably the best. It's going to be downhill from there. And you'd think that would be enough. That bliss is the best bliss I'm going to get. What a delicious mouthful. And you leave it there and enjoy. No, we're not satisfied. So you want another mouthful. And the belief is, the anticipation is, the next mouthful will give me pleasure. Satisfaction, meaning you'll be content. Contentment. You'll be content with it. So you have a second mouthful, and then a third, and then a second piece, and a third piece. Now look at the process of what happens. This is scientific fact, not religion. Gradually, we know the cake, the cake starts to appear to you as not so delicious. The taste is nowhere near as delicious. The pleasure is nowhere near as delicious as the first moment of the first pleasure. And soon, this pleasant feeling is already going downhill and is inexorably and shockingly turning into unpleasant feeling. And that's when you go, I better stop eating, otherwise I'll vomit. There's not a single sensory experience in the universe since beginningless time that we've ever had that is based on attachment that isn't like that. We're never satisfied. That's the disease of attachment. We are never satisfied. So the real point I'm getting at here is this, that the attachment is one part of your mind, and pleasant feeling is another. But we conflate them, Why did I even bring up feeling in the first place? There's some reason. Compassion. Oh yeah, the different levels of suffering. Okay, that was to help us understand the second level of suffering. So even when you understand the second level of suffering, which is when you get the happy things, when you start to realize that and you get renunciation, then you have a basis. If you only realize suffering is when the bad things happen, then naturally the only people you're going to have a compassion for are the victims of abuse, or the victims of starvation, or the victims of wars, the people who have got the suffering of suffering, and they have to be innocent victims. I'm sorry. If they deserve it, then they deserve it, So maybe a few animals and a few children we have compassion for. But if you're a bodhisattva and you've understood the 3 levels of suffering, you have unbearable compassion, as Lama Zopa says, for every single sentient being, and you have even more for the naughty ones, because they are driven by such intense delusions, driven by heavy negative tendencies, with no control whatsoever, and are creating unbearable countless lives of future suffering for themselves. So they're the ones who deserve them. So the bodhisattvas have more compassion for them. So that you could never have that in a million years if you haven't understood karma and you haven't understood the 4 Noble Truths. Just not possible. Impossible. Impossible. See, karma starts with yourself. You've got to have know your own suffering. Be sick of your own suffering and want to get the hell out. Okay, so the third step is the remedy. You apply the remedy now. So in this particular meditation, it's a visualization and the recitation of Vajrasattva's mantra. So here we go, this just sounds like religion. How can me imagining Buddha and nectar coming and saying some Sanskrit words, how can that purify me? It just sounds so ridiculous, Well, the more we understand karma, the more we understand the mind, the more it's logical that it will. As Lama Yeshe says, we create negativity with our mind. So we purify it by creating positivity with our mind. It is our mind that is doing this process. So the more you engage your mind in this compassion, in the regret, and now the third step of visualizing the Buddha, imagining the nectar, wanting to purify every atom of negativity, saying the syllables, knowing you're blessing your mind and blessing your wind energy and purifying your body, speech, and mind. You say it with confidence, The third step, the particular approach to it. The fourth one, Pabonka says, the most important. That's the resolve, the determination to not do it again. That's the thing about, 14 times I've asked Tim to forgive me and I've been always bad-mouthing him. And, until I make a decision, I will not bad-mouth Tim again. Or I won't bad-mouth Tim for 24 hours or even 10 hours, Because if you don't make a decision, you don't do it. If you have to, it's so obvious. It's so ludicrously obvious that when you decide to do something, that's what the meaning of intention is. Intention is in that third category of states of mind. It doesn't mean motivation. Intention is bare bones volition. I will. This is the real meaning of karma. The real meaning of karma is mental action, and that is this word intention. I will. Whatever it might be. And then it's driven by a motivation. So deciding is intending to do something. You won't do it if you don't intend to. You won't go to the shop and buy ice cream if you haven't intended to. It's a really powerful concept. This is the meaning of karma. That's what drives everything. So you've got to make some decisions here. Maybe I've been bad-mouthing Tim for 25 years and it's too hard to say I'll never do it again. So I really am taking responsibility now. And I will go maybe, and I'm doing my meditation at 10 at night. I can even say I will not bad-mouth Tim for 10 hours. And I will keep it because I'm asleep. I'm not joking. You give yourself a timeline. And this is where you get courage to know that you can change because you are taking responsibility. Now, if you have guilt in the beginning, you can't do any of the future steps. You just stay there poisoning yourself with guilt. You can't move forward. This is the most powerful one and gives you confidence. And don't be surprised. The next day, I will give Tim some peace, because you decided. So we've got to have confidence in our own mind, our own power. Realizing the power of decision, intention, I will. It's logic. So you make some decisions. If you've taken the lay vows, you will reiterate those vows. I will never kill. I will never steal. I will never lie. And that what you're doing, you're not just kind of wishful thinking. You're digging that groove ever deeper in your mind. It's like every time you do another push-up, you're getting stronger. Well, here you're strengthening your decision, your vows to not kill, lie, steal, etc. So purification combined with vows, these are the most blissful tools you could ever have. They're the best tools in the world. You can sit back and relax and watch television all day. Live in vows and do your purification at night. I'm not joking. Sitting there watching your breath for 1 hour a day but doing nothing else, you're taking one step up and 20 steps down, There's not enough power in it. Because our motivation isn't power enough. That's why vows are so powerful. We talked about this last week. Didn't we? We did talk about vows, didn't we? Yeah. So now any questions, please? Now let's discuss. Got 30 minutes left. Let's discuss.
Okay, if you'd like to ask questions, if you want to unmute yourselves or write a question in the chat if you feel too shy to ask, and we'll ask for you.
Any old question? I'll be very specific.
You can also put your hand up in the participants, or sometimes it's in the reactions button.
Yeah, Maddie, talk to me.
It's Lou.
Lou,
the
good darling.
I have
talk to me.
Is the environmental consequences of karma.
Yes.
If they were to be like reborn into a place where there's always hunger and the crops fail and everything else.
Yeah.
Does that imply that everybody else who is living in that place
of course. Yes.
has got the same karma?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. Absolutely. There's no question. Anybody who's got, who gets rich, that's fruit. Absolutely, it's the fruit of generosity. It's the fruit of generosity. But we have collective karma. So, yes, of course, those people, you might have met each other 47,000 lives ago. But, there's not a random grouping of people. You've got karma with those people, and you are all experiencing those. No. You see, not everybody. It depends. Some for sure. When it's a polluted water, that one river you all share. But you also do know, Lou, that some people are more fragile than others. So there could very well be a person who is born in a poor place due to, say, lack of generosity, but then also the food is polluted, the water's polluted, but they don't have much killing karma, so they don't mind the water. So so there is some karma there, because there's more than one. It's not just if it's just the pollution, yeah, it doesn't mean everybody who's there gets that, because some people, I mean, look at people who have an allergy to peanuts. That's one person among 10 million, isn't it, let's say, who if they eat a peanut, they die. So you're not sharing the karma in that case. But even if you are living in the river where there's a polluted river, it could be variations of killing karma. Some people who just drink one mouthful will die. Others can drink it and get only a little bit sick. So there can be, still could be a spectrum. But still, nevertheless, it's if you do get harmed by it, it is the result of killing. That's why I always joke about Warren Buffett, this mega rich fellow. I read his biography, and his daughter said, I've never seen water pass his lips. He's famous for the most simple diet. His 90 years, or probably 88 years of his life, all his meals are vanilla ice cream, some flavored Coca-Cola, and cheeseburgers. That's it. And he's 90 and fit as a fiddle. So that means, many people, but you also know this. Some people die when they, eat good food because they've got the karma to die. So that in those kind of cases, Warren Buffett, what might make someone else obese and get diabetes does not cause him that. So yes and no, both. But in general, there's collective karma, Lou, for sure. Do you understand? Yeah. Good. Thanks. Anybody else?
We've got a question in chat, Venerable Robina.
Yes, good.
It says, if the fetus created the karma to be aborted,
yeah,
and then you abort the fetus, when does the karma between the two of you finish? Isn't it harm upon harm upon harm? If you kill those who kill you, then what?
Yeah, of course. It stops when you change your mind. It stops when you do your part of it. When I decide I regret that and I vow to never do it again, and I've got karmic connection with that person, so then, I'm cleaning up my part of the karma. That's when it ends. Hope that answers the question. Yeah. Somebody else. Anybody else, please. Any old question.
Hello.
Hello. Who's that?
Here,
Gonzalo. Okay, Gonzalo, talk to me.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the second of the four opponent powers,
yes.
Reliance.
Yes.
How should I think it? Should I first rely upon the Buddha, then rely upon the people?
Usually, that's usually the way. The usual way we do it is it would be that, because the first thing you're thinking, once you've regretted eating that sugar, your very next step is, where's the doctor? Quick, whom can I turn to? So of course it's the refuge comes first. Yes. Definitely. So listen, Gonzalo, the first step is you're going to, let's just use the analogy of sugar. You've acknowledged you've eaten sugar. Oh my God, what an idiot. I can't believe it. And then you think, whom can I turn to? Your very next step is, quick, where's the doctor? So of course the refuge will be the first one. Do you understand?
Yes. So I first think I rely upon the Buddha, and then I think people.
Yeah, and then you'd visualize the Buddha. In this particular meditation, you'd imagine the Buddha looking like this Vajrasattva, if you're familiar with it, and then you'd visualize that the mind of your Lama is manifesting as Vajrasattva for your benefit. You might say a little prayer, but my feeling is I just delight that I found a doctor. I delight that I've got Buddha's teachings, genuinely, because I want to fix my rubbish. Then the second one is you think about the sentient beings you've harmed, and have compassion for them, and then compassion for those who've harmed you. Yeah? Clear?
Yep.
Thanks, Gonzalo.
Perfect.
Anyway, this is in the course notes. If you've got the course notes, it's all in there. This practice is all written out in the course notes. Did you get the PDF?
Yes,
okay,
I got it.
Okay. What else, people? Any other questions?
I would like to ask one more question.
Good, yes, Gonzalo.
About the question that a person made before of if you harm and then the people harm you, and
right.
When does karma ends?
That's right.
What happens if, for example, we have an intense karmic connection and you purify it, but I don't purify it?
Well, I mean, I don't know to be exact, but we've got the karmic connection. Yeah, we've got the karmic connection. And let's say I purified and you haven't, and we're going to meet at some point, and you will hate me. You will not like me. You'll want to harm me, you know. But because I've cleaned up my part of it, it won't affect me. It won't harm me. It won't hurt me. I mean, it has to be something like that. Do you understand?
Right.
Yeah, it has to be like that.
Yep. Thank you very much for
and that's
your
the tragedy
teachings, Robina.
that's the tragedy in our culture, when we believe totally as a scientific truth that you are the main cause of my suffering. Then of course I have to harm you back. That's the first thing we have, this vindictive, and that's why it literally never ends. And that's where the tragedy of karma is. We go from life to life to life, not knowing we've had the past karma with each other, and we keep perpetuating it. This is the nightmare, you know. This is the utter nightmare. Is that hand up there for Maddie again? Is it, darling? Talk to me.
Thank you, Venerable Robina.
Okay.
I was wondering if there's any negative karma accumulated in changing gender.
Well, you have to look at the motivation.
It's the motivation, right?
Has to be. I mean, in the end,
Absolutely.
when you're not happy with your gender, and don't take this as insulting. If you're not happy with your gender or not happy with your handbag, it's the same thing. It's attachment. It's dissatisfaction. So I know that would be seen as very shocking in the whole political movement of this, because it sounds very cruel. Do you understand what I'm saying? I remember one person at a course heard me speak this way and was absolutely shattered, like accusing them of being, because, you know, none of us think of it like this. None of us thinking of getting a new husband, or we think of it as just, it's our right to get what we want, and it's our right to decide what we should do. It is our right. We have the right. But the bottom line is, for the Buddhist one, we've got to see the motivation. And 99% of the time, darling, everything we do is based on attachment. But that's given that it's attachment, given that a particular person is born in this life not dissatisfied with their husband, but dissatisfied with their own body, knowing that that's maybe your particular dissatisfaction, then you recognize it as that, and you maybe go ahead and turn into a girl or a boy, whatever you want. And then, but try to do it with a pure motivation. Try to do it with bodhicitta. Otherwise, everything's wasting time. Do you understand?
I absolutely do, yes. Thank you, Venerable
Okay,
Robina.
darling. Thanks.
Oh, there's some more questions. There's a question from lovely Camlo in London.
Go on, Cam.
You want to unmute yourself, Camlo?
Good, Cam. Go talk to me, sweetheart.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Venerable.
Yes.
Nice to see you.
Happy to see you.
So I remember in one teaching you mentioned that the karma of stealing, one of the results is that you feel poor. So you're not just experiencing.
So I'm lost you completely. You're going to have to start that sentence again. One of the karmic
Can you
results
hear?
of what?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. I didn't hear the words properly.
So the karma of taking the ungiven, for example.
Oh, okay. Stealing. Yes, good. Now I get you.
Stealing, right? So one of the ripening results is not only that you experience being stolen from and being poor, but also that you feel poor.
Yeah, I think it seems pretty clear. It's often with some people, isn't it? It's like that, isn't it? Would you agree?
Even if you have even if you're comfortable and you live in a good house, you still feel like you don't have enough possessions. So which of the four ripening results would that be?
No, it's not. Yeah, it's not. I think that one is mainly, I've got a feeling that is more to do with attachment, being dissatisfaction. Because maybe it's more that than the stealing. Because dissatisfaction is whatever you've got, you're not happy. And that's whether it's to change, whether you're dissatisfied with the gender you've got, whether you're dissatisfied with the husband you've got, whether you're dissatisfied with the money in the bank, or whatever it might be, you know. And that would be very strong attachment, dissatisfaction from past attachment, as well as, let me think, if you're very poor, also you see you're very poor. No, see, okay, there's two things there. There's two things, right? Exactly. There's the tendencies to be mean. A person who feels they haven't got enough is a person who's miserly. A person, even if they don't have enough, they might have a generous attitude. They might still be cautious with their money and save every penny, but they might be content. So the mental one is the tendency similar to the cause. Not so much it would be the tendency not to keep stealing. No, you might not have that. But the tendency to feel you haven't got enough. That's attachment, actually. That's attachment. And then again, the strong way we identify ourselves, that's ego grasping. I am a poor person. You understand? So there's all that aspect, I'd say, as well. Because it doesn't follow, if you're born poor, which is experience similar to the cause of, say, lack of generosity or of stealing, you can still have a mind that's very content and very fulfilled. You hear lots of stories about poor people being generous and very happy and smiling, friendly people. So one is the mind, and two is the actual physical result. You know? Do you understand? Because everybody who doesn't have enough money isn't always miserly. So there's dissatisfaction is one thing, but being miserly is another. They're not the same. But the logic we have, because we blame the outside, we say, oh, well, all those people who steal, well, of course the poor people, because they've got no money. That's not the logical reason a person steals. Lots of poor people don't steal. Lots of poor people aren't miserly. But we conflate those and we think that's the logical reason. No, it's not. Because rich people steal, you know. So there's the tendencies, and that's attachment, never satisfied. Miserliness, that's the result of not giving. That's not so much the result of stealing, I think. I think miserliness is not giving, not wanting to give. Stealing, the karmic result of stealing would be that, you know, no matter how hard you work, you can never make ends meet. You never have enough to make things happen, you know, or you can't get credit at the bank, or no one trusts you, you know, do you understand? Or you even get stolen from. But not being generous, which is miserliness, that just means, you know, that's a different one, isn't it? They're different, aren't they? You understand?
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Good, thanks, Cam. Thank you so much, that's very helpful.
Okay, we have another question from Catherine. If you'd like to unmute yourself, Catherine.
Good, darling. Talk to me. Hello, Catherine.
Thank you, Venerable Robina, for your teachings. Hello. I wanted to ask you about the 4 hours purification. Presuming that we're doing it well and our intentions are correct and our resolve is kind of, you know, genuine and stuff, how long does it take to kind of clean up our act, our past kind of
You don't fully
bad
purify the karmic seeds. They don't stop growing until you've realized emptiness. You can be in, I mean, that's what the thing about samsara. You can be in samsara for eons. You can get brilliant generosity and the best compassion in the world. You'll be born as the highest God realm. You'll be born as the richest, most successful, most divine human. But you won't clean up the karma finally until you have cut the root of ego grasping by realizing emptiness. That's when the final purification happens. So the purification process is like this radical weeding. You're not pulling the seeds out at the root. That doesn't happen until you realize emptiness. But you can, on a conventional level, like if you and I have got this bad relationship, each of us working on our own mind, we can clean it up, you know, and next life we'll give each other a hug. So we've cleaned up the relative level. But until we've removed ego grasping from the mind, we've still got the tendency to do those things, for those seeds to grow again. So it's like there's great levels of practice, you know. The very first level is just get rid of, you know, put atomic bombs under the weeds, live in vows, strengthen your mind as much as possible so you can get ahead of the game. Then you go to the next level and you start to work on the delusions, attachment, and then you weaken it even more strongly. Then you get to add bodhicitta to the mix and you've got outrageous, and then finally you realize emptiness. So it's stages and levels of practice. Does that make sense? Catherine?
Yes.
You sure?
Thank you.
You sound doubtful. Keep talking. It's okay.
The connection is a little bit
sorry.
dodgy.
Okay. All right, darling. Good.
So, but yeah, I think I broadly got that. So presumably purifying as well as getting rid of some of the stuff, obviously not the kind of roots. Presumably it helps get rid of some of the obstacles to practice and to moving ahead. No,
this is the whole point. All of this is a massive job of cleaning up your garden, putting atomic bombs under the weeds, giving space for the virtues to grow. You know, that's why we've got to do the first level of morality in Buddhism is the morality of refraining from harming, because that's the most heavy. So we've got to stop planting more negative seeds and purify the seeds that are already there. Get ahead of the game. And then you get to work on your mind, and you do even more profound work. And then you get to the bodhisattva path, and you add piles and piles and piles of virtue to it. And then you can finally get the root out by realizing emptiness in the 6 perfections.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you please explain how to see the deity when you practice if it is not prayer?
If it is not prayer.
Yeah.
That part I don't know. I don't know what that means, but I'll answer the first part. So it's like, the point is, it's us using the visualization of the Buddha as a tool to help me purify my mind. So I visualize the Buddha, Vajrasattva, and then I visualize, first of all, Buddha sends nectar that fills me completely, and you're using your creative imagination. You are doing the work. You're using this visualization of Buddha to help you purify your mind. Buddha's not purifying your mind. You are. So you're visualizing the Buddha. And the whole logic here is you're trying to develop a relationship with the Buddha. That's the whole point in all of these teachings. You know, this relationship, especially in the Vajrayana Buddhism, which is the basis of the Mahayana in Tibet. You're trying to cultivate a relationship with the Buddha, to open the heart, to have some devotion, you know. So there's just a tool. The Guru is a tool you're using. The Buddha, the Guru, the Buddha, visualizing above, is a tool that you're visualizing the Buddha. You're visualizing him sending nectar. You visualize forcing out this nectar, filling you completely and forcing out like filthy liquid all the imprints of everything you've ever done and said that's negative. Then you visualize purifying the speech. Then you visualize purifying the mind. It's just a tool you're using. You're not asking Buddha to do anything. You're doing the work. I don't know if that makes sense. And the point is, I mean, in this path, we're developing relationship with the Buddha. Maybe that's foreign to some of us, you know. We're trying to open the heart, have devotion. So if you've got a lama, a person who you have decided is your spiritual teacher, that really means who is the person that you have decided is the Buddha for you, then it makes it very personal just to imagine this person. I mean, we all, let's say you've got a music teacher, you're practicing music, and you've got a music teacher. You love your music teacher. You want to please your music teacher. Your music teacher is not playing the piano. You are, but you're thinking of your music teacher. You're imagining your music teacher. We need this. It helps us. You do the practice. If you've got a therapist, you're thinking of your therapist all the time, giving you advice. It's your mind. You're just using this therapist to help you get clearer about your misery. So we all need love, as Lama Yeshe says. We're all dying for love, Lama Yeshe put it. It's so sweet. So devotion is a really crucial quality to develop eventually, because it means an open heart. And when your heart is open, you're receptive. And so things can happen, things can change. When the mind is deluded and negative and separate, then everything's cold, So it's got many functions, but it's not as if you're praying to the Buddha to purify you. I mean, you could even visualize that. You can even think that. But it's your mind thinking those thoughts. And it's your mind, therefore, that is doing the purification. I hope that helps. It's a very good question. Thank you. Why is it that until we have realized emptiness, we don't cut the root of it all? Because everything that we do that's negative, even everything we do that's positive right now, is based on the assumption of an intrinsic self. So as long as we keep doing attachment, keep doing anger, keep doing this, keep doing that, we are sustaining the belief in an intrinsic self. And Buddha happens to be telling us that there is no such self. So as long as we keep believing in the lie, the seed, then we will continue to do negative actions and continue to do harm. But once you've cut the root of believing in the intrinsic I, there's nothing to be attached to. There's nothing to be angry about. The whole system collapses. The whole samsaric system collapses. in other words, a psychological logic to it, which initially is not evident to us until we've studied a bit, you know. So I hope that helps. So we just think. We think 90 minutes we've been here. If we get these 4 steps really clear, really understand regret is kindness to ourselves, acknowledging the dumb things we've done because I don't want the suffering. Then we turn to the Buddha as our doctor. Be delighted to have a doctor. Rely upon the doctor to use his method so I can heal myself. Then we have compassion for those we've harmed. And if we can have compassion for those who've harmed us because they're going to suffer terribly in the future, then we do the imagining purification. Then we do and then the 4th one, I didn't finish the 4th step. And the 4th one, resolve. You decide, I will never kill again, or I won't badmouth Tim for the next 10 minutes or something. You make a strong decision. And this gives you the power to realize that you're in charge, not some victim of circumstances, you know. That's the essence of it. And as Lama Zopa says, we're insane not to do it every day. So this combined with living in vows, you can sit back and relax. You have the best tools on the planet, I tell you. Okay, precious ones. May bodhicitta grow and grow in the hearts of all. Jangchub, Semchog, Rinpoche, Make, Panam, Keguchi, Kepanyampa, Mepayang, Gong Ne Gong Du Pelba Shog. And all these seeds we planted, these 90 minutes, may we nourish them from this moment forward, so they do manifest as our Buddhahood as quickly as possible so we can benefit to sentient beings. That's it. Thank you, Sarah, darling. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. And I'll see you very soon. Thank you, sweethearts. Okay? You're frozen, all of you. No, I'm frozen. I don't know. I'm going anyway. Can you hear me? No, you can't. Can you hear me still, people?
Thank you.
Now you can hear me. Oh, good. So thank you. All froze.
Thank you.
Bye, darlings. Thank you. Bye.
So much.